Good afternoon, everyone. This is What is New and Hot with Yoga for FSM. I'm your host, Mason Auch, also the Yoga Product Manager. So my role here is to oversee all of our development and make sure that we are delivering the highest quality features and functionality to our clients. One of the questions you may have is, what is yoga software? So yoga software is built out of three different core areas. We have our Yoga for FSM, which is primarily around our procure to pay process, ensuring that we can automate and help assist anywhere in that process necessary. We have our Yoga for HCM, which is where we're strengthening a lot of these HR processes, handling things like non-employees, doing unique integrations to DocuSign, things along those lines. And then finally, our last portion of the Yoga Flexible Software solution is our Yoga Connect software. So whenever we need two pieces of information to communicate and talk to each other, we utilize this tool to help facilitate that conversation. Today's webinar, we're specifically going to be focusing on our Yoga for FSM. And then even more specifically on that, we're going to be looking at our AP product line, taking a look at what is new, what we've released recently, and getting to show you guys a demo from Ingestion all the way to the Infor application as well. With that, we're going to go ahead and jump in. If there are any questions, feel free to jot those in as we're going through today, or there will be a portion where you can go through and submit at the end as well. So let's go ahead and we'll take a look. So where we're going to start originally is actually out in our email portion. So there's a lot of different ways that invoices can come into our systems these days, right? We talk about those that are still being paper, that are being sent into our AP departments. We can talk about those that are being emailed in. We also are seeing higher and higher trends of EDI and also CSV and Excel uploads as well. We're going to talk about all of those today, but what we're going to start with is specifically with our email ingestion. So here you can see I have a single invoice or a single email that has multiple invoices attached to it. We can configure these email connectors to a way that works with your organization best. So if it makes sense to bring all of these attachments in as one invoice, we can do that. Or our most common one is that for each attachment, we're going to treat those as separate invoices. So what I'm going to go ahead and do real quick is I'm going to mark this as unread, and then we're going to go ahead and we're going to ingest this into our system. And then we will go take a look at them. Perfect. So that's gone ahead and ran. So the first area that all of our records are going to come into is it's going to come into this queue here called AP review. So the AP review queue is where anything that needs to be stopped and worked by your AP team is going to come into. You'll see over here on the right-hand side, we have reason codes associated with every single one of these. So the design here is that for any records that stop an AP review, you're going to know exactly why they stopped an AP review, and that way your team can target those and move those through as quickly as possible. We also have our time in queue, which helps us understand exactly how long these records have been in the system. We have a few different ways that we can process these. Today, we're just going to be working oldest to newest, but if your organization is using invoice assignment rules in Infor, we can go ahead and bring those over as well and apply those dynamically. So that way, just like in Infor, if you were trying to assign those invoices out to your AP team, when they come in here, they'll be assigned out to your AP team following those exact same rules. So first one we're going to open up here is we're going to go ahead and open up a non-PO, and we're going to start here with our City of Fountain invoice. Here we can see right from the very beginning that we know that this record is missing a routing category. So this is the only thing that we're going to have to fix on this record. So let's go ahead and we're going to open it up. What you're going to see is right up here at the top again, we call attention to that we're missing the routing category. And we can see here that we have our invoice on the left-hand side and our form on the right-hand side. All of these fields can be configured. We can set up triggers, things along those lines to make sure that it's meeting all of your guys' business needs. So here you can see it as I scroll down. We have just one field that's missing here, and that's our routing category. We'll go ahead and we'll fix that here in 1 second, but I do want to show off a few things as well here. So one thing that I want to show off here is that whenever we click into a field, you can see that it's going to highlight that field in orange over here on the invoice as well. And that way you can hover over it and you can see the confidence of that extraction. So it doesn't matter where you are. If you're trying to figure out where this piece of data was extracted, you can see that piece of data was extracted. If for any reason, let's say, for example, our invoice date didn't extract, right? And we need to have that information filled in. We can always click into that field. And then if you press the control button, you can see all of my text becomes this yellow text, where then I can either click or I can also drag a box around and it will go ahead and bring that data in for me. Any type of formatting, anything along those lines will be automatically applied here. So you can see it takes that September 21st, 2021 date. We're going to go ahead and flip that directly over to the correct date that we need in our format here. Another thing is, if we come down here to our invoice routing category, if I open up these pop-up boxes, we can see that we always have this information available to us here. Another thing that we try to do as well is for those that like to stay on their keyboard as much as possible, we try to make sure that we have kind of type ahead available as well. So here we can see, let's say we're going to send this to med surgery, right? So if I come down here and I'm in my invoice routing category, if I type med/ and then press tab, what it's going to do is it's going to go do a lookup to see if there's any additional information, and then it will go ahead and populate that for us right here in the system. One thing as well is once every single field is filled out on our record, we'll see that our submit button becomes blue up here. So before, when we didn't have our routing category filled in, or if we clean something like the invoice number out real quick, you can see here our submit disappears, but when we fill that information in, we can see our submit approved. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to submit this record over to Infor, and then we're going to go ahead and go find it in Infor here. So let's submit. We'll go ahead and we'll save and route. One thing that's very unique about the Infor, about our application and the way it interacts with Infor, is that we're not utilizing any interface tables or anything along those lines. So what we actually do is we do multiple different integration web calls into the application and bring that record over exactly as we expect it to. So here we can see I have my invoice right here that came across, and we can see that if I open up this record, it is out in the pending approval state. So because we have so much control over each portion of our integration, and it's in real time with our integrations, what we actually do is we can interface it all the way in, and then we can actually ask Infor and say, Infor, are there any errors or warnings with this invoice? And as long as the only error or warning we get back is this total distribution amount is not equal to the invoice amount, we can say, hey, that is totally fine. My organization has our general ledger being done, the coding being done by that first level approver. So I want to go ahead and I want to send this out regardless. So this is just going to go out and it goes out for approval. And then from there, our approvers will code this and then get it pushed through. So with this type of a setup, what this really does is the only time the AP team has to touch this record is when they touched it in AP review over here in Yoga. And then all the records came over here. It flowed through perfectly. It's going to go out to the approvers. The approvers will code and approve, and then this will go out for payment. So what we're really trying to do is that if we are touching a record, our intention is to touch it once, and that is going to be in our Yoga application. Then we're going to push it through into Infor and let it flow and let Infor do its work as well. So let's jump back here and let's take a look at one of our purchase orders. And then as well with this, we do have our invoice image and our supporting documentation, which I'll show that supporting documentation off here in a second. So if we open up one of our POs here, so we're going to open up our staple invoice. Here we can see that we have our invoice image on the left-hand side and our form on the right-hand side here. One thing to call out on the list view out here, so if we come back and take a look here at our list view, you can see that we actually don't have a reason code on this. And that's because this invoice is actually perfect. There's no reason that this needed to have stopped here. We have STP turned off, so that way we can show you guys this. But this would have gone straight through without any stopping needed. Another thing that we do as well, so over here in the supporting documentation tab, anything that comes from email, what we'll do is we'll actually render the email information here and put it in the supporting documentation. So what this really allows us to do is this allows us to be able to see who sent this email. Sometimes, we can tell these vendors all day long, hey, this is an unmonitored mailbox, but a lot of times we see that they include information here that's valuable to our AP processors. So we go ahead and we render that here, so that way they have that available for them. Another quality of life item that we've spent a lot of time on and a lot of work around is that when we're working these PO invoices, sometimes just having one monitor isn't enough. So what we actually have is we have a new pop-out feature as well. So this can be enabled by default if you want to have it set up across all the records you open, or it can be set up just individually as well. So I'm going to do it just individually for this one. But I'm going to click this pop-out here. And what we can see is it actually pops this out into its own area over here. And I can drag this tab over to another monitor if I want. So just for a real quick demo here, we're just going to put both of these on the same one. And what's really unique is that this tab here will stay in sync with our main tab. So if I exit this record, you can see here, I get this please open a document. And if I go open up any other document, what it will do is it will go ahead and it will render that right here as well. So this is really useful because you guys can drag this over to your other monitor, and then you can just be working away here and have these being able to be zoomed in a little bit more for while you're doing line pairing and things along those lines. One other thing that we like to do as well, I mentioned earlier, we like to try to set up as much keyboard shortcuts as possible. So one other one that we have here is if you're going through and you tab through this entire record and you get down to the bottom, what you can also do is you can do Shift Enter, and Shift Enter will go ahead and automatically route that document and then open the next document for you. So it's really, really handy for those that do not like to have to go back and forth in their keyboard and their mouse. And you can see as well, it's going to automatically load that next document. And this does respect any filtering, sorting, anything along those lines that we have as well. So for example, if I was filtered on McKesson and I had that auto load next, it's going to auto load the next McKesson invoice for us. So it's just going to keep loading those and allowing us to power through those records. So getting to see a non-PO and a PO is really cool. And it's kind of, at this point, kind of the meat and potatoes of where a lot of our AP teams is going to be working, right? We also do support both contracts in Infor as well. So if you guys are using contracts or service contracts or even capital contracts, we can support all of those, as long as credits and credit memos tied to a PO as well. So anything that you're able to do in Infor, we have set up and ready for you to be able to be done here as well. Let's go ahead and let's take a look at one of our other features, and this is our merge functionality. So as I said earlier, we are treating each one of our invoice attachments as a separate invoice. So this can sometimes create issues where, if I open up this record here, we can see that this is going to be a time card, right? So here we can see this is a time card for some consulting or for some nurses that worked. And you can see here it's not associated to any invoice. What I do know is out here, it's actually associated with this RPI invoice right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to merge that time card into the other piece here. So if I have the document I want to merge, if you come up here to the three dots up in the top right, you can see we have a merge document into. So I'm going to click merge document into, and it will open up everything that's in the AP review queue. You can sort, filter, search, everything along those lines, just like we can in our regular view. So here you can see this is actually, you see the nice little lock. This is locked because this is the record that I'm in right now. And I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to merge this into the RPI Consultants one here. So I'll go ahead and I'll click that. And I get this nice little merge document panel. And what this is going to allow me to do is this is going to allow me to either merge into the primary document or merge into the supporting documentation. Also, what this allows me to do is this allows me to see if, for example, I picked the wrong record. So if I picked the wrong record, you can always click go back to list. And from there, you can then choose a different record as well. So this helps you kind of find out exactly which one you're looking for and make sure that it's attached to the right record. So here you can see, now I have the right record here. And now I'm going to go ahead and for this, I'm going to drag it over to the supporting documentation. Now I could go ahead and I could drag over this supporting documentation as well, but because it's the same record, I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to discard this page and get rid of it. The other way as well is if you have multiple pages, you can come up here to add all to, and I can click add all to supporting documentation. That way, if you have 10 or 15 pages, you're not going through and dragging each one of those records over. I'll go ahead and I'll click confirm merge. And what this is going to do is it's going to take me back to my main record here. So here you can see this is my invoice with all of my time. And now in my supporting documentation, I have both my email and my time card as well. Let's go ahead and let's take a look at some of our split documentation as well. So if I go ahead and I open up a record that may have multiple invoices here. So here you can see I have multiple invoices attached to this record. What we can do is we can come up here to the three dots and click our split document. And here, what I can do is I can just click on this first one here. I can click split document, and we're going to send this back to OCR. So we'll just send that one back to OCR. We'll send this one back to OCR. And finally, we'll send this one back to OCR. As well, if you need to delete any pages or anything along those lines, you have the ability to do that here within the split documentation as well. There we go. And then we'll send as well this main document back to OCR as well. Here we can see all of those start to come through our system here. We talked a little bit about that a lot of our invoices come in through email nowadays, right? But another really common way that our records are coming through are going to be EDI records or even CSV and Excel documents. And one of the hardest challenges that we have as an AP department is going through and having images mocked up with those, working those in interface tables on EDI records, managing those TIPIDs, managing all the inbound rules, things along those lines. So one of the things that we've been working on as well is reducing some of those pain points for our AP teams. And one of the ways we do that actually is through EDI ingestion. So now we have GHX export those 810s or whoever your EDI provider is. GHX seems to be a very common one with our healthcare clients. But if you're working with Vizient or any other of those, as long as it's in the standard 810 format, we can pick those up from an SFTP, and we can then go ahead and ingest those into our system. Now, this is obviously one that stopped, so this is one's going to have a few issues, but I wanted to still show it to you guys. So if we take a look at this EDI record here, we can see that on the left-hand side, we've gone ahead and mocked up this nice little invoice image for us. This is done off the raw 810, so that way we can see all the information that's available to us, and we see exactly what's coming from GHX in this regards. We can see that this record actually stopped over here, and we can see that this stopped because the PO number was not found in Infor. So this is actually a common item, even with our EDI records, right? Either, when Boston Scientific sent back this record, the purchase order number was not correct, or they used their internal purchase order number or anything along those lines. So what we can actually do here, and this works for our EDI records, but it also works for our PO records as well. What we can do is we can actually send this over to our purchasing team and work with our purchasing team to resolve this issue. So what I'm going to do real quick is I'm going to come up here. I'm going to remove this reason code that was automatically applied. And we're going to come down here and we're going to choose this missing or invalid PO reason code. When I click this, what you'll see is on my routes, all of my routes are grayed out except for one here, which is my purchasing invoice resolution. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose this one. And what it's going to ask us for is it's going to require a comment. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to say
Could you please advise on the correct PO number to utilize for this invoice? And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click confirm and send this off. What this now does is this returns the AP team back out to their records here. But what's really interesting is over here in our purchasing invoice resolution queue, this record now comes over here and is now here for our supply chain team to take a look at. So here, if we open up this record, for the supply chain team, all of this will be grayed out, so they do not have the ability to edit anything on this record. So that way it's locked down for them to respect the segregation of duties. We never want AP teams being able to make purchase orders. We never want our purchase order team, so the ones that can create those, being able to correct or make invoices. And if we come over here to the document notes, we'll see right here, we see, can you please advise on the correct PO number to utilize for this invoice? We have my date, my time, and who I am that asked this question. And then the supply chain team can come in here and they can type back, please utilize PO 12345. And then they can submit their comment, and then they can route back to AP review. The point of this purchase invoice resolution queue is not to replace any of the amazing functionality in Infor. So we're not going to be handling any unit of measurement discrepancies. We're not going to be handling any price discrepancies here. Our objective in this portion of the application is to be doing things around the line pairing. So we're going to be working with if the PO is closed or open, if we're missing PO lines, and that is it. All of those other items, we're going to push those into Infor. We're going to use the cost messaging or the price messaging in Infor to do that type of stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to, as a PO team member, right? My job is to come in here, take a look at this, advise my AP team, and send it back to my AP team, and just keep on moving through my job. Very quick work for our supply chain team members. And what this is really trying to address is the bigger issue, which is if we don't have a queue like this, there's not a native spot to do that. And where a lot of our AP teams resort to is emails back and forth. And the issues with emails is one, they're very hard to manage. But two, in 9 months from now, when an auditor comes through and asks why we've made a decision on an invoice, there's no history or anything along those lines for us to be able to point back to of why we made that decision. So all of that's now here in our application, and we also export that to Infor in the comments section of the invoice as well.
And then this is actually going to go over to a different queue here in Yoga, and it's called our purchase invoice resolution queue. And the point of this queue is to be able to have conversations with our supply chain team members on things that are unable to be interfaced into Infor. So what that means is we are talking about that a PO header is closed, a PO line is closed, things along those lines. This is not where we have conversations about a cost message or a unit of measurement discrepancy, anything along those lines. We still are going to handle all of that up in Infor's matching system. They do an amazing job with their messaging and with their tolerances and everything along those lines. What we're trying to do here is we're trying to provide an area where you're able to have a conversation with the supply chain team on these type of issues. So when a supply chain team member opens this up, all of their fields will be blanked out. And here they'll see when they open up this comment, they'll see that I wrote a comment on this date saying that the PO number is closed. Please advise on a correct PO. Our supply chain team would then be able to come back in here and recommend using PO. Let's do 567566. Right? They would then submit that comment, and they'd be able to route that back to the AP team. So because in that queue, they're unable to edit the record and they have to send it back to AP review, we still respect all of the segregation and responsibilities of job duties, right? We don't want purchasing being able to edit invoices. We don't want AP teams being able to edit purchase orders. As well as right here, we can see we have that column configure where we say recommend using PO right here. So I'd be able to open this up as an AP team member and then go ahead and make update to the new PO number and push that into Infor. We do have some other really cool things to show off as well. One other reason code that we've recently added is the new hold invoices. So if I come here and I click hold invoice and I click save, it will ask me to require a comment. So I'll say this invoice was not correctly sent by the vendor. I've asked for a new one. We can go ahead and click confirm with that. And we can see, if we come back out here to the AP review queue, we can see that we have a status over here where we have the hold, and we can see the reason code here as well. So this really is helpful if we have multiple AP team members in the system working, and we want to show that I have reviewed this invoice and there is an issue with it and it needs to stay here. Do not spend your time. Do not open up this record. It needs to stay here. And then from here, we'll be able to then, once we get whatever we need from the vendor, come back and update this, or maybe even send it to cancel because they've issued a new invoice. All righty. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and jump back over here, and I'll go ahead and open it up for some questions. I know that was just a very, very high level overview of everything that is available for the Infor application. But if there are any questions at this point, we'll go ahead and answer those. All righty. Looks like the first question we have here is, looks like there's a question around the fact that this organization does not have centralized AP. So how does this affect them? So that's actually a really good question. We're seeing this more and more, especially with our clients that are not healthcare. A lot of our government or public sector clients don't have a lot of those centralized AP departments. And this tool actually works really well with that as well, right? So while we showed off the fact that we're consuming from a centralized invoice box, we can set up multiple different invoice boxes that can pull from, as well as if it makes sense to have some of those end users in the application as well, right? So let's say, for example, we have a really talented individual that has helped our department for a long time, does a lot of the general ledger coding, everything along those lines. What we can actually do is we can set up a way for them to come in here and instead of just seeing this add invoice screen, they would be able to upload their invoice and then do their own coding as well. So this is just something that we have available and something that can be configured. And this is really an item that we talk through a lot when we go into more of kind of these longer demos and also kind of some of this discovery before we do the implementation. So this is something that we talk about more in depth there to see exactly what works well for your organization. What I showed off today is what we would kind of call our out-of-the-box solution or our pristine. But every one of our clients have their own different needs, different changes, everything along those lines. And this software is very specifically built to handle those type of items. So if we need to remove fields, we can easily remove fields. If we need to change fields, we can change fields. If we need to sync additional information out of Infor, that is very easy for us to do. Because our team works with Infor, we are Infor-centric piece of software. It's not like we're working with Workday and Dynamics and Infor and all these different ERPs. Our team understands exactly how Infor works. It is very easy for us to pull out an additional piece of information. It is very easy for us to work with the way that your system is configured. So, you know, this is really the advantage of the Yoga flexible software, right? We come with kind of an out-of-the-box solution, but based off discovery, design, everything along those lines, we'll make sure that this is kind of tailor-made for your organization. And then the other question that we have here is, how do we handle cost discrepancies? So that's a really good question. Where we do kind of the purchase invoice resolution and the vendor maintenance are when records can't interface into Infor. So obviously vendor maintenance is, hey, I need a new remit to, or I need a new vendor. And then the purchase invoice resolution is going to be, I have a missing PO or a missing PO line, right? And that's where we're working with those team members there. Anything like unit of measurement discrepancies, cost messaging, things along those lines, we still are going to want to push those into Infor. What's going to happen is when they come into Infor, they're going to come in and we're going to, if it's a purchase order, we're going to attempt a match. When we attempt that match, it is going to generate those buyer messages, right? Where it's going to have a cost discrepancy if it's outside of those tolerances that you have set up. So all of that's going to be handled within Infor and worked in those same queues. And those are the only 2 questions that we have. So at this point, we'll go ahead and we'll let the webinar end. If you guys have any more questions, please feel free to go ahead and send those here to questions@rpic.com. We would love to reach back out, have a longer conversation. It's very hard to demo an entire solution here. But what we would love to do is if you reach out to us, we'd love to hook up to your guys' Infor environment. I would love to run some of your guys' actual invoice examples, those samples, those things that are, those gotchas, right? Let's take a look at those. Let's run those through. Let's see what we have. Let's talk about what we have available to us to be able to modify and see if this solution works well for you.